Hey, this is Vernon Ross, and welcome to the Social Strategy Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. I've been teasing you guys for this about this for a little bit, and it is Andrew Warner from Mixergy. Hey, Andrew, how you doing today?
Good to be here.
All right, so when I first the way that I actually got this interview, I was at the Financial Bloggers Conference, and Jamie Tardy was talking to her, and she was actually giving a talk, and she goes, "Hey, if you want to take action or you need to take action on things when you find out about them." And one of the ways that I took action and was able to use it to my advantage, she got Andrew Warner on one of her interviews. And she said, you told her it was one of the best interviews that you've ever done. And I'm like, oh, wow, I can't live up to that, but I'm going to email them anyway. So right from my phone, I sent the email and here you are. So welcome to the Social Strategy Podcast.
Glad to be on here.
So one of the things I wanted to ask was about online business. So I mean, you interview a ton of people that start online businesses and that have their own business. What do you see as far as trends right now? Where do you see things going with online business?
I don't know much about trends. I try when I do my interviews to think about what's going to be useful, not just today based on what's coming up, but 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you should still get into the minds of the entrepreneurs that I interview, and it should affect you. It should rattle your brain. It should change the way you see the world. Mm-hmm. And so when I hear that they are moving into mobile, I don't want to hear what's new in mobile. I want to hear the thought process behind going into mobile. When they're considering or dismissing going into hardware, I want to understand the thought process that helps them decide why they're doing it. In fact,
right.
I take it back, not why they're going to, but why they did it. Why did they 5 years ago go into mobile? Why did they 10 years ago go somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
And then if I get you the thought process, then it'll apply no matter where you are, even if you don't have something that's directly related to them.
Right. So, with that, I get a lot of brand new business owners, and they're like, well, I want to start a blog. And something that was just in a recent podcast was a statement that a blog is not a business. And I've been trying to explain that to people. How would you best explain that?
Whether a blog is a business?
Yeah.
I think
is it not?
Anything could be a business.
Well, you start a blog. I mean, it's not a business until it's making money, though, right?
Maybe there's some truth to that. Yeah, absolutely. I tend to think that it's not a business until it makes money. But then again,
right.
I'm reading Jeff Bezos' biography, The Everything Store, and there's a long time there where he was not making money, where there was no profit, but I'm telling you, that's a business. There was a long time where
right. You can be losing money, right?
Yeah. Before we started, one of the things that I spent way too long looking in my notes for, looking online for, then going and calling my wife because she and I have been talking about this, is a phrase. Mm-hmm. And I was going to tell you before we started why I needed that phrase, and I think you said hold it for the interview. The phrase is this. It's called Target Fixation. You ever heard of that phrase?
I have not until just like a few minutes ago.
Here's how it came up. I had my brother over, and he had a motorcycle, and he started looking at these motorcycle crash videos, which why someone would want to do it, I don't know. Not if you have a motorcycle.
Right.
But he said, it's amazing when you watch someone just go and crash. Today, people have those Go cams on their heads, those GoPro cams, and you can see what they're thinking about or what they're looking at before they crash. And it turns out often what they do is they look at the obstacle, they look at the wall, and then they crash into it. So you look at them crash, and then you see they were staring at a tree that fell down in the road, and they couldn't take their eye off of it, and they crashed into it instead of swerving around it. And the reason that was amazing to me is because it's what happens to us all the time in business. We crash a lot. And I started Mixergy because I crashed. I started a new site, a new business. I was successful. I made millions in sales. I thought I knew it all, and I crashed. And when I think about all the times when I crashed, I wonder why. And I realized that part of the problem, a big part, is target fixation. Where when I had this business that crashed, if I could go back in time and look inside my mind, what I would see is day after day thinking, What if this business fails? What if I lose everything? What if I was never successful? Who am I to get into this new business? What if people see that this failed and they no longer think of me as a success the way they did before? I had target fixation. I focused on the branch that was in the middle of the road instead of the part of the road that was clear and I could have just ridden past. And that's, if you were to ask me what I'm obsessed with right now, it's this whole approach, this whole focus. The idea of focus. What we focus on is what happens. And so,
It- no, it's interesting that you bring that up. I was talking to a friend of mine who also just started a podcast about some of the things that she's going through, and part of it is this, am I good enough thing, and you get so focused on that it's one of those things that it seems to take you off track.
yes,
And being a coach, I'm a certified coach, and I help small businesses all the time. It's one of the things that I have to deal with is how do you get people on track when they're so focused on what may not happen?
right. Because it's really hard when there's a branch in the middle of the road to not notice that there's a branch in the middle of the road and crash
Right.
into it, right? Because it's strange, because it's different, because our minds tend to go to the thing that's, the danger sometimes. And I had that exact same thing. I started Mixergy, and I kept thinking about all the different ways that people would realize that I was a fraud, because who am I to do interviews with successful people and talk about, and pick even who's successful? What, I'm now the arbiter of who's successful? What if there's no revenue for Mixergy, and now I've interviewed all these successful people and there's no revenue for Mixergy? And does that mean that the whole interviews were a waste of time? Because if it didn't work for me, why should it work for my audience? And my mind was going there. It was target fixation, the wrong area.
Right.
When I was able to shift my focus to what I wanted instead of what I didn't want, the part of the road that I wanted to get to instead of the part that could crash me, that's when things started to change. And that's also where beyond Mixergy as a business, things started to improve. And it's hard. It's hard for me not to go into, it was at the time, hard for me not to go into work every day thinking, wait, you're going into an office to do interviews? Kids do video from home. What are you going into an office? I couldn't stop thinking that way.
Right.
And then I started to train myself. One of the things I do is, you might have noticed, I don't know if your audience is going to get to see the video, they should, but you might have noticed I have beads on my hands. And I keep these with me a lot, and I want to be aware of what I want. And I want to use the beats to bring me back to focusing on what I want. So in this interview, I walked in here thinking, what if I do a terrible job? What if this whole thing becomes another bad video that I put out on the internet and everyone says, what, Andrew's just this guy who, I thought he was good, but he's boring when he does it himself, whatever. Oh, my mind went to all those things. My mind went to, what am I packing my day with so many things? With, I have another meeting after this. What if I can't make it to the next meeting? What if I have to pee in the middle of the interview? Do I announce that I have to pee? All that bullshit. Can I bull?
Yeah, you can. You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Then I realized what I want is to just tell you my story. Just focus on
Right.
that. I think if I tell my story openly, then people will see themselves in it. If I try to pretend, then people won't. If I tell my story openly, then yeah, some people are going to say Andrew's a weak-minded person, or what, this is a boring interview. All that's going to happen. But if I tell my story openly here, and my true self comes out, then you'll identify with it, and it'll be helpful. And so I just walked around here, actually. I just kept saying, just tell a story, tell a story, tell a story. When I was starting Mixergy and I kept focusing on all the reasons why Mixergy was going to fail, I said, you know what? It doesn't matter if millions of people don't like it. All I need are 200 people on this planet to like it enough to pay for it. 200 people are going to pay for the interviews. And I walked around, I had these beads with me, and I remember being on the train, and I would just say 200, 200, 200. That's what I want. I just need 200. My mind would suddenly race to, what if you can't get $1 million worth of this? This isn't $1 billion business. What are you doing trying to build just interviews into $1 billion business? My mind would just go back to 200. I just need to get back to 200. Focus on what you want and not what you don't want, and then you'll start to see what you want happen in your life. Do the opposite, where you focus on what you don't want, and you'll see the same, that it'll happen for you.
It is interesting that you say that, because I actually gave very similar advice. I don't think it was I didn't put it exactly the same way, but the advice I gave was, you're focusing on the wrong things. Don't focus on, how you're going to monetize this so that you can produce an income report in a month showing how you've made thousands of dollars online. Focus on the first couple.
Yes.
And if you can make, come up with your product first. Because one of the things I think people have an issue with when they want to start an online business that focuses, purely on, I guess, passive income, something that they don't necessarily have to do all the time and trade the dollars for hours, is what do they do? How do they actually create a product that is good enough for people to buy? And I go through it too. I'm in the process of developing a course, and I've actually changed courses a couple times on what it is that I wanted to do because I'm just like, oh, this isn't good enough. I got to start over, and I got to, it's not enough information, and I've only got 2 hours worth of videos, and I can't very well give people 2 hour videos and ask them to pay $97 for it. That's not fair. And then I look at products that I've purchased and, the thousands of dollars I've spent on this course or that course. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's not 2 hours worth of video in most of these courses. So it's like, why am I actually worried about it? So it's good that you bring that up. Target fixation. I'm going to have to write that down and put it on the wall. Because as a motorcycle rider, I've experienced that. I haven't experienced it where I've crashed, but yeah, you do. You get focused on the stuff that's in the middle of the road.
And sometimes we don't even notice when we're getting distracted by these thoughts because they don't always come out. I call them countermind thoughts. You want to do something and this part of you just counters it. Countermind thoughts don't always come out and very clearly announce themselves as, who are you? What are you a failure to? You're going to fail with this. They're not always that explicit. Sometimes you're sitting there and writing. Do you ever have this? You sit there and try to write something and you get up to get coffee. And then you come back to write and you go, well, you know what? I should check my website to make sure it's still up. It's important to see, right? And then you come back to write and you go, you know what I should do is I should make sure that there are comments that are responded to quickly. Let me see if anyone even wrote anything. Then you say, I should see what this other guy wrote. Let's see what Copy Blogger wrote, but when they were starting. And your mind just goes off in those different places. Those are still countermind thoughts masquerading as to-do lists, as things that you have to do, like get coffee and go check out these sites. What if you were really to think about it, and tell me if this is true, and if it's not, be open with me.
Sure.
If that happens, if you really think about it, you'd notice that, hey, you know what? My countermind is telling me that I can't write this, that I don't know what to say, that I am not that great a writer, or that I'm not feeling inspired right now and I should step away. And that's why I'm doing those things. The I need to get coffee is a symptom. The real problem is my countermind is telling me I don't have anything to say. Does that sound right?
It kind of does. Do you think it's more of a I've always told people that I think it's a more of a part of the human condition where we try to protect ourselves against things that are dangerous and things that are unknown. So it's, the thing that prevents you from walking into that dark cave is the same thing that prevents you from actually implementing in your business. You know it's dark in there, you don't know what's in there, you don't have a light, so it's safer for you to just walk past it and not take shelter there. So I think it's the same thing in your business. It's safer to not go through with creating that product or doing that thing that may actually set you free. It's just safer to do the things that like go to work every day.
So what's your biggest challenge right now? I've been open about all my insecurities and all my challenges. Do it. What's your biggest one?
My biggest thing right now is how do you actually monetize a podcast?
Yeah.
So, a podcast is great, and I learn a lot from my guests, and it's awesome to talk to people that I've idolized for years. Mixergy was actually the very first website that I discovered online with anyone doing anything like this. And then they just start coming out of the woodworks. The second one that I looked at was David Siteman Garland's The Rise to the Top. And I remember when he was just doing video and had a TV show, and I noticed with yours, you were doing video and audio. Well, at a point, you were just doing video, and then you started doing video and audio. I was thrilled because I could take it with me. So I'm looking at all of these things that I've looked at and idolized over the years, and just wondering what in the hell am I doing? And it's that whole thing where it's like, well, am I good enough to do this? Should I be doing this? I haven't made $1 million doing this yet. So who am I to tell these people how to do this, or to get these people on that have done this if I'm not already wildly successful?
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest challenges right now. And I fight through it. I mean, it's something that you just have to fight through. I know that it's bullshit, but
so does saying it out loud, does it does it make it more? Does it give it more power to over you or less power over you to say, who am I to be doing these interviews if I haven't earned $1 million myself?
You're breaking up just a little bit.
Yeah, I see that our connection stalled out there, but you're back now. Can you hear me in real
Okay.
time? Or
Yeah. Yeah, you're good.
so does it make it feel like it has more power over you or less power over you to have told me publicly that you think, who am I to do this when I haven't earned $1 million?
A little less actually. Every time I say it to myself, and when I get in that mode, I know the mode. I've identified it. It just gets me fired up to do something. So I'll make sure that I take action on something. I'll call the person that I didn't want to call. I'll do the follow up that I've been putting off for whatever it is. I'll make sure I take some type of action so that it has a little less impact each time. And I've found that I've gotten further in my business that way and less frustrated about the things that don't go right, and I'm able to move past them a lot easier.
And that's one of the things that we found too in the small group of people who've been testing this process. I call it the true mind. You want to get into the truth of your mind, what you really want, what's true, useful, and wanted, as opposed to what's distracting. And we found that by being open about those things that aren't true, the junk in our head, like I'm not going to be successful or I can't do this interview until I've earned $1 million, then I've earned the right to interview other people who've built successful companies. By just being aware of those thoughts, it reduces their power over us. The next thing we do is we come up with counter arguments to it. We question it so that when it pops up in our heads, we don't just try to brush it off, but we realize that it's been disputed. We've questioned it and it's gone away. So if you were to question this thought of, who am I to do interviews with entrepreneurs who are successful when I didn't even build $1 million company? If you were to question that, what would you say? How would you confront that thought?
Well, the way that I've confronted it and the way that I've helped other people that I know that are dealing with it is, I just tell them they didn't start with $1 million. You have to start somewhere. And the fact that you're doing it, and no matter what level that you're at, the fact that you've taken action puts you one step closer to achieving that goal. And I know that for a fact that if I'm taking action and I'm taking intelligent action, because just doing things to seem busy in your business, I've gone through that too, isn't actually taking action. But if I'm taking intelligent action that actually moves me closer to my goal, then I don't feel so bad about it.
Yeah.
And
just if someone's listening to you, a guy who hasn't made $1 million or whatever the definition of success is that you have in your head,
right,
interview someone who has had that success that they're aiming for. If they're watching you interview them, can they identify with your questions more? Can you ask the questions that they care about on the path to that more than someone who's already made it?
I think so. And that's one of the reasons that I started the podcast, is because I found that I was having access to people like Jamie Tardy and people like you and people like Pat Flynn. Just being involved in social and making those connections, it was easier for me to get in touch with those type of people, the people that we're reading books about and that are doing these things online. And I'm emulating a lot of that stuff that I see. So it's okay. It's easier for me to do it because I identify with what they're talking about. So yeah, I think so.
I agree with you. It's so strange that Jamie Tardy's nice. I don't know that she would spend an hour with you. I'm nice. I know I wouldn't spend an hour with you if we weren't recording this and putting it online. And I say that as a person who's been the beneficiary of these kinds of conversations. People who wouldn't ordinarily return my emails because they're busy would spend an hour with me doing an interview and letting me get in their heads. There's something magical about doing an interview. I think it's the idea that people want to help, but they know it's impossible to help one person at a time. And if they can help one person who could then broadcast that out to dozens of people, even, let alone hundreds, maybe sometimes thousands of people, if they could do that, it's such a better, efficient use of their time. It also means that when you're being interviewed by someone, they've prepared so much more than when you're just getting on a call with someone who wants to quote unquote
pick their brain,
right?
Exactly.
Those people never prepare. They're there to just pick your brain. I'm here to just learn. Someone who does interviews will spend a time doing research, checking out the site usually.
Right.
All right. I want to let you continue to do the interview, but I'm still curious about this one product that you had because you want to start selling and there is a product that you have in mind. What is that product? What's the latest product that you want to sell?
I want to do a course on networking, and I keep getting pulled towards doing a course on sponsorship. very early on in my online ventures and businesses and things that I've done in the past, I actually ran a pretty successful video game tournament company.
Hmm.
And one of the ways and one of the things I identified is all these kids were paying all this money to go to these video game tournaments. They were competing in games like Halo, Call of Duty, and at the time Counter-Strike and stuff like that, Guitar Hero, but they weren't getting any payoff. And I just didn't think it was fair. I'm like, all these kids are spending all this money. They're flying to this place, that place. I'm going for the enjoyment and happen to run into a couple of these tournaments. I'm like, this is kind of crap that these kids are putting all this effort into playing this game and they're not getting anything. Okay. So we decided to put together a company. Me and a buddy of mine did it. And one of the things I noticed is that there weren't any sponsors at these tournaments and at these events.
So how to get a product about how to get sponsorship.
About how to get sponsored.
And it would be on your site on vernonross.com where you're posting this interview, and
yes,
that's where you would get your customers.
Pretty much.
Okay.
I may actually create another site that would be specialized for that, but that's where it would start.
But the idea is the traffic would come from your site where you're blogging about business and social media.
Right.
I see. Okay. And what you're imagining a product that you sell for $97. What's keeping you from creating it?
You know what? Absolutely nothing. And one of the people that I was coaching pointed that out to me the other day. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're right. He goes, if you hate it so much, you need to go ahead, do it, get it out of the way, put the information out there that's in your head that you're always giving people for free, and then you'll be done with it. And if you find out new stuff about it, you can just add it to the course. It's done. You're done with it, and you don't have to keep teaching it. You can go on and do other stuff like teaching businesses about social and be done with the whole thing. And she was absolutely right. So I start compiling the information and putting it down, and I'm thinking I'm going to do a course on possibly Udemy or Skillshare or some place like that, so that I actually don't have to go through the process of trying to put together a courseware and program something and put it on my website. I was thinking about using, I guess, WP Courseware, but I looked at that and I'm like, well, why spend money on an actual course when there are sites like Udemy and Skillshare where I can just record it? Exactly, and I can record the video, and they send people to it. So that's kind of the plan now. So I'm a little bit further along than I was.
Okay. But there's something holding you back. It's not just BS. I think there's some reasoning behind it. I don't know if this is the right place for you to talk about it, but if you
no,
let's go for it.
Let's go into, I'm trying to, and I think part of it is you fight with this, and I know I do. Am I good enough to do this?
Like, do you know enough about sponsorship?
Right.
What
Because
about this? I'm
sure,
on,
go ahead.
I'm checking out my sources to see how much traffic you have.
Mm-hmm.
Basically have nothing on vernonross.com.
Right.
Is that also a concern? If you go ahead and spend all this time creating it, no one's going to see it, and what's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What else is there?
That's really it. It's like, well, how do I drive enough traffic to a program that's brand new, no matter how good it is? If you can't get traffic to the site,
right,
it's worthless.
Okay. How does it feel for me to have brought that up on your own program?
I don't mind because I'm pretty transparent about that. I don't get, 150,000 views a month. I get a little bit, 1,000 or so, but it's not going to be anything earth-shattering as far as traffic. So, no, that actually doesn't bother me. I know that, and I share that with people. It's like, no, I don't get a ton of traffic. I can drive traffic. And for some things, I'm getting some decent downloads on iTunes, but website traffic on vernonross.com is, like you said, almost non-existent.
Okay. There was a story, I used to love talk radio. There was a story about a DJ who talked about how he is #1 in the market. He is terrific, and he apparently was doing this interview, and then suddenly he got a phone call, and it turns out that the station was knocked off the air for 2 hours while he was doing this interview and then some, and nobody called, nobody knew it. And I wouldn't even know it, except this guy on some late night talk show talked about how he was being interviewed at the time and said, all these DJs, they talk a big game about how big they are, but frankly, they have nothing. No one's listening. Right. And I always thought, I'm going to be the opposite. I'm going to be open about when I don't have traffic. I'm going to be open about what does get people to come over.
Yeah.
And I like that you're doing the same. There's obviously not no one on there. I'm exaggerating, but still, that is an issue, and I get that. So, are those two things keeping you from creating it?
I don't think they're keeping me from creating. I think the biggest thing that was actually keeping me from it is not wanting to embrace the going down the sponsorship road. That's not really who I am at this point. It's
You
who
don't
I
want to be
was
the
a
guy
few
who's
years
known
ago.
for getting sponsorship. You want to do something else.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and I always get approached for it. It's like, hey, I know you knew about sponsorship. Can you help us out with this? Can you help us with that? And you don't want to turn people down because you want to help, but you don't want to get boxed into doing that. It's like, oh, I can help you with that, but I'm a lot more effective at helping you with social and getting social to drive traffic to your site.
What about
Or,
this? Does it take too long to create a course?
no, I don't think so.
You could do it. What would you do? How do you even get it going?
That's a good question. I probably a couple weekends, really,
Okay.
maybe 15, 16 hours dedicated to creating some materials that go along with it, some workbooks. The knowledge is in my head. I would need to brush up on, what's current in sponsorship, which is one of the things that, now sponsorship's not that elusive of a thing. There are groups out there on LinkedIn and all types of places that you can go and find sponsorship information. What I found is lacking is no one really tells you what to say, or they don't tell you how to actually pitch sponsors. So that's part
Yeah.
of what I'm putting together is I want to put together templates to help people actually go through, this is step one. This is what you do. This is how you actually pitch them. Start with the PR department, make some contacts there, stuff like that.
Okay.
So I mean, just really putting it all together and just taking the time. That's the biggest thing that's holding me back is actually taking the time.
All right. And it's not, there's no sense of, oh, this is a big burden that's going to take too long. You're saying that it
There's
feels
a little bit
easy.
of that. There's a little
Yeah,
bit of that. There's a little bit of
I get
shit.
that. Even if
I don't
something
want to
doesn't
do
take me a
this.
long time, running doesn't take me long at all. But I
Right.
often will say, oh, it's going to take me too long to go out there and run. And I want to put it
Yeah.
off.
I've been doing that. I started running 8 months ago, and I hate it. Always have, always will. I'm not gonna like it, but I know I need to do it. So there you go.
I, I love running. But for a long time, the first 3 miles always sucked. Always painful. Actually, I think it's because, at least for me, and I think for others also, that runner's high and the sense of accomplishment and the excitement
Hmm.
doesn't happen till mile 3. So running makes you
Yeah.
work really hard until you find a little bit of satisfaction, and then it gets
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Just right when I'm about to end is when I'm like, oh, isn't too bad. No, go ahead.
See, I've been told that sometimes I take too much control of an interview that's supposed to be guided at me, but I'm fascinated by this.
No. That's good.
See, because I think we have three thoughts here that many people in the audience could identify with, and God knows I can. The idea that it's going to take too long. Frankly, even when I know I need to just clean out my drawer and it won't take that long, I could toss a lot of things out. In my head, I retract from doing it because I think it's going to take too long. So that's one thing. Lack of traffic is another one, right? And the
Right.
third one was, what was that? The very first thing that you said was,
The fear of doing it.
and being boxed in,
Yeah.
right? That now you're going to be identified, and do you even know enough?
Right.
Which of those is the most painful? The one that really is the worst?
I think for me and for most people, it's the do you know enough? Are you enough of an expert? Because even when you're standing up and giving a talk, and I speak at events all the time, and you're sitting there, you're delivering this information. It's like, is this enough information, or is this just something that they could have Googled? And
And
you
is there
know that
someone
it's
in the audience who knows way more and is thinking, this is an amateur hour right here?
right. And there's you see somebody shaking their head in the audience, and there's like, oh man, he knows his stuff. I'm not telling them anything new. I'm a fraud. Somebody come
Yep.
up here and remove me.
So
It's
that's the big one.
yeah.
How do you respond to that? If a stranger were to come to you and say, hey, you don't know enough about sponsorship, what would you respond if you were to fight back with them?
I've learned to not fight back. I would probably respond, you may be right, but I'm going to give you the knowledge that I do have. And if there's something that you learn from it, then you're going to be, you're going to have one more thing that you knew or that you know now that you didn't know when I started.
I see. So if I could just leave them with one thing that they didn't know before they started, then I've done a lot.
Right.
And
Or,
uh-huh.
if they can teach, if that person came up to me and was like, well, I tell you what is it that you know that I don't know? Tell me.
Right. I'm not too proud to learn.
Right. So, I'm open to it. I just don't resist that type of stuff. You never win. It's like getting into a internet fight with someone on a forum. You're just not going to win it. So, take the high road, make a nice statement, and let them keep going.
Interesting. So maybe I've got something that's useful. If there's only one thing that's useful in here, then I've done my job. What about the idea that there are some people out there who don't even know the first thing about advertising? Do those people out there exist who you can help get at least the first sponsor?
Well, you know what? And that is kind of where I've been focused. And
That
that's
at
where
least there's people out there who are really good,
right.
sorry, who don't know anything for whom you are really good.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing is, when I talk to a small business owner, it's like, well, you know what? I may not be the have all end all expert in social media, but I know a lot, and I can help you drive traffic, and I can help you do this or that with whatever it is that you're doing. I can show you effectively how to use Twitter. I can help you with an actual content strategy. I can help you with a lot of things that you just don't know how to do. And it's going to be at a level that's going to get you to a point further in your business so that you can do it on your own. And as long as I can deliver that kind of value and help them actually bring money in the door, then I've done exactly what it was that I needed to do.
And have you sold ads before?
Yeah, I have. That's not that big of a deal for me. I've been able to sell, ad space and stuff like that.
What's the one that you're proudest of?
You know what? I've never really thought about it like that. Just coming from a
Is there one that you happen to be proud of? Maybe not the most proud, but just, yeah, that's a good indication of what I can do.
probably the biggest thing I was proud of when we were doing the video game thing in Rockstar Games. I was able to negotiate a deal with them for them to pay for us to do these mall tournaments where we were take up space in a mall and set up a bunch of Xboxes, and we were showcasing this game. It was a Rockstar Table Tennis. Horrible game, but it was they were testing their physics engine in one of the games, and so they put this crappy game out. But the fact that we were able to negotiate, getting them to pay for the mall space, getting them to send us like hundreds of T-shirts and a bunch of stuff to give away, it was an awesome event for us, and we were able to really help GameStop advertise, and they saw a huge like 20-30% uptick in traffic.
Wow.
and actual sales on the weekends that we did the tournament, so we could justify that, hey, look, we did this, you guys saw an increase in sales. So yeah, that was
And
one of the most
the brands that you got in touch with, that's impressive.
yes, so
Most
that's
people can't get tech support at those companies to return their
right,
calls, and
exactly.
you got them to actually pay you.
Exactly. So that was fun. And I did the Rockstar thing, I did it all over AIM
Really?
Instant Messenger. Yeah, I never even talked to the guy until the week before they had to actually cut us a check. So it was all through email and Instant Messenger.
So here's what I have for that one that I asked you, what's the toughest, the most painful thought, or the one that has the most power? It's, I don't know enough. And then when we talked about it, you said, well, you know what? There are newbies out there who don't know anything. I may not know everything, but they don't know anything, and they could definitely use me. Another one was, I can leave most people with at least one concept that will help them with ad sales. I've sold ads before, which most people who teach online just can't say. They teach something that they've never done before. And you've actually even negotiated a deal with Rockstar for mall tournaments, and you got all that off of AOL Instant Messenger. Most people can't
Right.
even get a date off of AOL Instant Messenger, but they tried. I remember seeing that.
Oh yeah.
So are those true, or are we just deluding ourselves?
I think a lot of it is delusion, to be honest.
I mean, no, I mean, the I don't know enough, that's what you're saying is the delusion.
Yeah, that's the delusion that I
The way
don't
we're
know
fighting
enough.
back with it, with that thought, which is, hey, newbies really need me. That is true, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I think
That's
so.
not happy, clappy, warm and fuzzy thought. That is true. There are newbies who don't know anything who could use someone to guide them.
Oh yeah, every
Yeah.
time I talk to someone, it's validated. So I bombed. At least I felt like I bombed. Nobody would tell me that I did. There was a marketing meeting, and I was asked to speak at it. I'm a board member of our local social media club, and they asked me to speak at this event. It was for the Regional Arts Commission here in Missouri. Went to it, prepared for it, was talking about video and Instagram and and Vine and a couple other companies, Tout Video, and that was actually going to be the name of the talk, and it ended up turning into more of an Instagram thing because Tout is really not valid anymore with Instagram doing 15-second videos. So I'm giving this talk, and I just think that the talk was horrible. And I'm like, I don't know what happened. It was just one of those days where my thoughts just weren't coherent. It wasn't coming across as smooth as I'd like for it. I wasn't as relaxed. I don't know what happened. But before the meeting, I was talking to a director of this STL 250 celebration. It's the 250th year that St. Louis is a city, and we're celebrating it. She had a question. The lady that invited me asked me to talk to her about social media. She's like, "Hey, you should meet Aaron." So I went and I was talking to her, and she asked a question about their social and what their message was and how they were delivering their message. And so we start talking, and I just start rattling off information, and we ended up drawing some stuff out. And at the end of the 10-minute conversation before the actual event started, she goes, "Wow, I would have had to pay a consultant like $5,000 to give me the information that you just rattled off the top of your head in 10 minutes. You got to get involved with this." And so now I'm involved with that on their social media task force. So that was some validation. I'm like, yeah, all right, yeah, okay, I'm not bad. So that's kind of how I validate the fact that there are people out there that I can help. And she wasn't a newbie. She knew her stuff. So when I get people that don't know, and I deliver them just a little bit of information, and their head's like, "Oh my God, wait, stop." That helps. That helps a lot.
And I'm actually just confirming just checking out your background, confirming that you have the background. We're talking about a system administrator, right? You did that for
Oh, yeah.
13 years?
Yeah, I still do that.
That's not
I'm
an
still,
easy thing to do, right?
oh no, I'm still in Cubicle Nation. So yeah.
Oh, you are? That's who you're
Oh
doing it
yeah.
for? Why didn't I see that?
Yeah. Oh, I don't highlight it. It's not something that I highlight or talk about
Okay.
outside of work, just because of the type of company I work for.
All right. Um, my sense is, too, that there's more underneath there. That I got some of, I call them countermine thoughts. I got some. The I don't know enough, and I love that you're willing to talk about that. Lack of traffic. This is going to take too much time. My sense is if we were to spend more time together, you and I, we can come up with even more of these things. And these countermine thoughts are where maybe you're not noticing that you're spending a lot of time. But I notice more and more that I spend way more time on those thoughts than I should.
Right.
Like, what's another one that came to me that I'm almost see, I don't want to be presumptuous and I don't want to be a jerk on this interview. I want
No, go
I do
for
want
it.
us to get real. I don't want to do another interview where someone says, "How much money did you make with Bradford and Reed?" when they know the answer because it's all over the internet, and they say,
Yeah,
"What
I
about
refuse to
Mixergy?
actually
What's
Bradford Reed.
like we've done it."
Right.
Sorry, you have it in your research, don't you?
Yeah, I wasn't going to ask you about that. I know
You're
about the
welcome
old
to ask
days of
anything,
Bradford.
but I keep sending out every time I do an interview. I keep emailing, I keep tweeting it out because when I do an interview, I want to tweet out so that the person who interviewed me gets some audience for it, and as a way of saying thank you and to show it to my audience. But then I realize I'm tweeting it out. I'm tweeting out the same interview over and over.
Right.
So I'm glad that you and I could just get real here.
No, that's fine. One of the things I did want to ask you, you were like $1 million affiliate for CJ.com, right?
Yes.
How in the hell did you do that? Because I talk to people all the time about monetizing their blogs, and one of the things I tell them, well, get into an affiliate program that helps your audience. Don't just join one just to join one because it has a high payout. Do something that's going to help. So if you're talking about web stuff and SEO and that's your thing, put an affiliate program on there that actually complements that and that you use, that you can talk about. How did you do that so many years ago?
What we used to do was we had greeting cards that we were doing hundreds of thousands of greeting card sends a day. And
Right.
after you send out a greeting card, I would say, well, do you want this? And the this would be often a product that we got from an affiliate program that we would get paid for introducing you to. So you'd see an interesting greeting card. You'd come to our site to send it out to a friend, address it, and so on, write your cute message, hit submit.
Right.
We send it out, and then we say, and by the way, now that we've sent it out, Vernon, we thought you might be interested in this. And frankly, I don't know that I've ever said this publicly, but one of my sales processes, one of my ways of opening doors was I would use Commission Junction, really
Mm-hmm.
blow out the affiliate by sending as much traffic as I could to that. First of all, test it on a small scale, see if it's worthwhile, and then blow it out just so the person on the other end of the affiliate program would contact me and say, "You're amazing. How do we do business with you?" And then I would say, "Okay, let's talk about how we can do something much bigger than this and integrate you in." So that was my way of just getting them to call me back because I wasn't in Silicon Valley. I wasn't part of the cool kids. I wasn't known, and I didn't have a team of people who could open the door for me. And so this was my calling card. I was going to bombard you with so many orders in a
Right.
short period of time that you would have to then want to follow up with me.
So so how would you do that today? How would someone do that today? It's not the same environment.
I think there's always something. I don't know everyone's situation. I think you just need to
Hmm.
be much more aware of what's there. Much more. I mean, this is not as practical as someone would like, but
Well, let's go for more practical then.
on a practical level, it was find a way to build a machine. I'm reading the Jeff Bezos book, The
Hmm.
Everything Store, and one of his epiphanies was to build this flywheel. They needed to create a virtuous cycle where they reduce prices, and then as a result, I'm not getting this exactly right, but it was something like
Right.
reduce prices. As a result, you get better prices from your wholesaler. And
Hmm.
then because of that, you can reduce price. Actually, yeah, you reduce prices further, which brings in more customers, which then allows you to reduce prices even more. And the more that they could do that, the better their business got. And once they got that, and this sounds very basic the way that I just expressed it, but they had much more meat on that system. And once they understood it, it felt like their business just took off. And for me, it was, and for everyone, I think it's just find that way to build that cycle. Back in the greeting card business, it was you send out a greeting card to five of your friends. I
Right.
need to get at least two of those friends to send out a greeting card in the future. And
Hmm.
hopefully, or one of those friends, and then get you to come back. So I said, how do I do that? Well, the way I can get you to come back is when you send out a greeting card, I can say, I can put a pre-checked checkbox on that send form that says, do you also, Vernon, want to know about other great greeting cards that are coming out next week? Be one of the first to know.
Right.
Many people would leave that checked.
Yeah.
And then when the recipient got a greeting card, we would say, "Hey, recipient, did you know that you should also send Vernon back a greeting card? Click this button, and it's all pre-addressed, and it'll go directly to Vernon."
All
And
right.
so every time someone new sends out a greeting card, they're introducing two new people as part of this process to our site, to our way of thinking,
Right.
and that allowed us to keep growing. There was a certain point where I didn't realize that you maximize the greeting card sending audience. At some point, they're all sending it to themselves. You know,
Right.
a grandmother's much more likely to send it to a child than a child back to a grandmother. So once you get the
Hmm.
grandmothers, and as many kids as you can, you're pretty much done. And so we
Right.
hit our max, and then we had to think about what else was out there.
So getting away from the greeting card story, you've told it. I know you've told it, and you just expressed your frustration about telling the same stories on interviews. So I don't want to do that. What a question that I got about Mixergy, and I was just talking to people that I know, and just flipping out about the interview, and it's like, how do you get people, the people that you talk to, the experts that you talk to that have gone through this pain and built their business, how do you get them to actually sit down and go through in detail the stuff that you put in your masterclass courses? Because that is perplexing to me. How and why would they do that? And how do you get them to do that? Do they get paid on the back end? Do they get a share? Do they just do it out of the kindness of their heart or wanting to contribute back? How does that work?
I saw that that's something you're curious about. So I was just on Quora looking at Mark Suster's and all the questions related to Mark Suster on Quora, just out of curiosity. And one of the questions that I was curious about popped up. It was, does thisweekend.com pay Mark Suster, a well-known venture capitalist, to host a show on This Week? And he hosts a show weekly. And he
Hmm.
hosts it with research. And he hosts it by putting his name on the show and then therefore attaching his name to this project, to this business this weekend. Does he get paid, and how much does he get paid? And I clicked over to see the answer, and it was Mark himself answering it. And he said, I don't get paid anything, even though they offered it.
Oh wow.
because I believe there's so little money in each one of these programs for him to make that it's just not worth it. What he wants is for all the energy that they would put into getting him paid, for them to put that, this is just me speculating, for them to put that energy into getting his show out there, into creating a product he could be proud of. You know, a few $1,000s is nothing for him. A really good product is everything, something that really matters, that helps people. Same thing
Right.
with the people who teach on Mixergy. They don't want the few bucks that they would make from being a Mixergy course leader, but they do want to know that beforehand we prep them well, that afterwards we take good care of what they've taught, that our audience is a good audience, you know, not just some slackers who are looking for entertainment, but people who are actually going to use it and care about it and are more likely maybe to buy their books or help them out in business. And so the fact that we have a paid audience helps in that way. I can say I have thousands of paying customers. Everyone who's going to watch your course is a paying customer. Paying customers with us are much more likely to be your paying customers too, because it means that they have some money. It means that they're willing to pay. It means that they're willing to pay for education, for things that help their business. So that's it.
Right. So let me ask you this, and I'm looking at the time, and I know we're going to have to wrap pretty soon, because I'm sure you have something else right after this. When you start thinking about, or when I think about a course, and I'm looking at Mixergy, and I'm thinking about Udemy, and it's funny. It's, when I look at some things, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should go that route. I'll start seeing it all over the place. And I heard an interview, and I don't remember whose podcast it was on. I guess I'll have to put that in the show notes once I find it. It could have been David Siteman Garland. It may have actually been the Solopreneur Hour. They were talking to the creator of Udemy. No, matter of fact, it was Pat Flynn from the Smart Passive Income podcast. I'm like, that's not a bad idea. But when I think about a Udemy, how do you feel about taking your knowledge and putting it out on a site that you don't actually control versus keeping it in-house like you do at Mixergy? And, what's like the plus and minus of doing it?
I would do it not only would I did it. They're friends of mine. They wanted to experiment with this idea of Udemy, and they said, can we use anything from your site? I said, you can use anything you want from my site to do it. Whatever you need, if I created it, you can use it. I didn't even want to get paid. They paid me, which is nice. They keep paying me. But it's not really, to me, it's not significant. What's significant is they get my ideas out there, and they help me create more interviewers. I think the world needs more curious people, and I'm happy that it's out there. I'm happy that they spend the time looking for new listeners for my stuff. And I can take the exact same ideas and put them up on my site too. And I do. So I can make money from the people that they get and make money from mine. Or the better way to think about it is I can spread the word to people who I can reach directly, and they could spread the word to people who I can never reach, but they're obsessed with getting a hold of. So I think you could do both. I'd also suggest that the long-form course format is overrated. I don't have the time to watch and participate in every course that's out there that goes multiple hours. What I do have is I run into work every day. Where's my backpack? Somewhere there. Like I ran into work today. Whole time I run, I have my earphones on, and I want to learn. I want to put something in my head that's entertaining, that's inspiring, that's motivating, that's educating, that will make me a better person when I arrive at the end of my run than when I started. And so I think it could just be something small. Shorter form. The important part for me is that it actually comes from a good source, that it works, that it makes sense. And so, yeah, I like putting my stuff out on other sites, but I don't like that all course makers start to think of themselves as college professors who have to teach day in and day out for a whole semester. I think shorter form makes more sense.
Right. Now, question, do you do, and I haven't seen this, do you do any keynotes?
Yeah, I try not to do them. There's one that I did that I'm especially proud of. The only one that I think I did in the last year that was recorded, World Domination Summit, where I talked about this. I went through this whole countermind process like you and I talked about, and then I also talked about the true mind, like the stuff that you really want. When I walked into work in that greeting card company, every day I walked into work not feeling like, what if I can't make a sale? What if this thing falls apart? I walked in every day ready to rip the world's head off because I was so eager to do something. I walked
Right.
in with this vision of being like the people who I admired. It was be like the biographies that I read. And I would walk into work, and it would be hard if you were to walk into work with me to keep up with me because I was on such a path, so determined. And that part is the most exciting part of life, to walk in with that vision of who you want to be, what you're here to do. That's the exciting part.
So let's go down that a little bit. And so when you get there, when you get to that point, and you get really excited about something that you're doing, but you have this other thing. So you have work, but you have this thing that you're actually really excited about, and work starts to become gray. And it's like, how do you tell people, what do you recommend that they do when they're in one situation that they like it, it's okay, but they see that there's so much more out there, and it's like your eyes have now been open to all of the possibilities, and you're really wanting to chase it. How do you recommend that people transition that, or what would you recommend they do?
What do you mean? I don't understand the question. Sorry.
So you're in a work situation and you have a job, but you have this thing like you're passionate about, like you were with the greeting card company, and that's what you really want to do, but it just doesn't make the revenue for you to be able to walk away from it that actually pays your bills. How do you make that transition?
I would try to. There was a long time that the greeting card business didn't make the revenue I wanted, but I kept focusing on how much money I wanted. I'll tell you how much money I would. I'll tell you one of my mantras. My mantra at the time was $1 million. You could wake me in the middle of the night and ask me what I wanted. If I was bleary-eyed, ill, unaware of what was going on, I could tell you. Well, I wouldn't tell you because it was a secret, but I would know it. $1 million. And you could have a conversation with me and talk about how people shouldn't focus on money, and they should focus on more important things. In my head, I wouldn't even argue with you. In my head, I would just think $1 million. I'm going to get $1 million. I remember when I hit that $1 million target, it felt great. And then I set another mantra, another goal. And that's what it was. I knew that mantra, that thing that you want, but most people don't. You wake them up in the middle of the night, and what they're full of is nothing but fears, nothing but worries, nothing but doubt and uncertainty. And I'm not pointing fingers and saying I'm better than that. I still have those fears and worries and doubts, but I know the mantra. We have to have that one. I think that focus, like a mantra, repeating in our heads, because everyone else's words are repeating in your heads. For me, it was my buddy Roman, my friend Roman, who told me I should get a job. That could have been the mantra that was in my head. For most people, it would be just like that. Someone says, hey, you should get a job. Stop kidding yourself with this whole startup world. And it reverberates in their head over and over. I wasn't going to let
Right.
someone else plant a thought in my head that would echo over and over. I had my own. $1 million.
Okay, good. No, that's
I
kind
have
of what I
mine
was
now. Do
looking
you have
for.
yours? What's yours? I don't want to put you on the spot. It's okay if you don't.
I don't, and that's the thing. I'm trying to figure. I'm like, well, you know what? I want this, and it's kind of freedom, and I'm like, I want freedom from this other stuff. I know that it's other stuff out there. I'm just not exactly sure how I'm going to get there,
It's okay.
and that's,
I
I mean,
had no
that's just
idea
the
how I was going to get there. I
God's
didn't think it would
honest
be
truth.
greeting cards. I thought it would be email newsletters. It ended up being greeting cards. Go frickin' figure. Greeting cards. I don't even like greeting cards. I hated greeting cards.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, today I like them. I have note cards here. I'm a much calmer person, so I could send out thank you cards and all that. But back then, I was so
Right.
determined to succeed that anyone who spent 5 seconds picking out a greeting card and then another 5 seconds writing one, I thought was wasting their time. So it wasn't about the path; it was about the end goal.
And no, that's good. And I'm glad you put me on the spot with that, because it's one of those things. It's like, well, I was thinking about it as you were saying. I'm like, I don't know, what would I say? It wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be that. So I need to work on that that thing.
Let me buy you a set of beads like this and send you something that I've written about how it works. I've called you out here about your traffic. You've been open with me. I want you to be
Right.
just as open and say, Andrew, you know what, this doesn't work, and just as open with yourself and say, hey, this does freaking work. Whatever it is, we'll adjust, we'll change, we'll learn. Let's be honest, but be open with it. Here, I'm gonna buy you beads. How do I even freaking do it? Here, I'll give you Q. There you go, done. Get that
Okay,
and
cool.
try it. Everyone should, whether they have beads here that are going to help them or what. have that mantra, that one thing that you want that's repeating in your head over and over and over again. And I'm not judging you. Frankly, I was a person who
All
was
right.
so fixated on money that my mantra was money related. Maybe for the audience, it's something different. Maybe for you, it's about freedom. Whatever it is, have that thought, understand what you want, and let that echo over and over. Let that be your guide instead of all these things that you don't want. Remember, target fixation. It also works on the good side.
Mm-hmm.
Fixate on
Wow.
what you want.
Right. No, this is awesome. I didn't expect it. It definitely went in a direction that I hadn't planned, but that's a good thing. I like that.
Good, me too.
So, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I said, good, me too. Me too.
Okay, well, I tell you what, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We're just about 2 minutes over, and I don't want to keep you. I know that you've got stuff that you've got to get going on. And so I just wanted to thank you, Andrew, for coming on to the show. And hey,
You
guys,
know what?
this
Before
is
you
the
say
Social
goodbye, let
Strategy
me do one more
Podcast.
thing. Did you just
Okay.
end it? Am I interrupting the ending like I interrupted your questions? Let
No,
me
no,
do
you're
this.
good. Go ahead.
Let me try 5 people from your audience. I will send them beads. If they will, I don't even have a website. If they email me, truemind@mixergy.com, I will buy them beads too. I will send them the guide on how to use it. I will not sell them anything if there is no sales process in this. In fact, email me and say, I heard you say that you're not going to charge me with Vernon. If you're one, I will send you the beads. I will show you how to do it. I want people to do it and to give me some feedback and tell me if it's working for them. To tell me if they're becoming as rabid about their goals, about if they are using target fixation to their advantage. And if they are, great. If they're not, I'll learn from it and we'll adjust. But let's say 5 people. I think I could send out 5.
Yeah, I want to explore that. I'm curious about the beads and what's involved in that whole
These are
process.
meditation
So,
beads. People can't see it, so it sounds like, what are these magic beads? It's just meditation beads, just beads strung up
right.
on a string. And the reason that we use them is because I want to hold you accountable. I don't want anyone out there to say, all right, I got my mantra. My mantra is freedom. Great. I said it, freedom, freedom, freedom. I feel it 5 seconds, and then they move on with their day. No. When you have this
Mhm.
thing in your hand, you really start to connect with it. When you have this thing in your hand, you can't stop until the beads are done. And you will, and you'll feel it, and you walk through your life, and you're going to actually start to express what you want to be, who you are.
Very cool.
Done.
Awesome. So I tell you what, that's it, guys. This was Andrew Warner. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. I'll catch you on the next episode, and that's it.